big part of my motivation for starting this channel was growing up as an adolescent kid and growing up to an adolescent adult, and just like how it keep compounding over the years, and being more troubled and, you know, numbing myself with drugs and alcohol and getting in fights, and hoping that some of the pitfalls I struggled with as a kid, my story could help maybe parents, you know, become better parents. The irony is, I don't know that if I'm taking my own advice, and I find myself parenting the same way my parents parented me. And, you know, I wanted to help, you know, young boys that are adolescent kids just like myself. And, you know, this baseball season, I got a couple of them on my team, and instead of being understanding and avoiding the same mistakes I feel like they made raising me, I just find myself yelling at them and telling them, do as I tell you. And I see it in how I'm raising my boy. And, you know, my wife had sent me a reel the other day on Instagram that was, it said something about, you know, when a kid is questioning you or they're being defiant, it doesn't mean, you know, it's a sign of intelligence. It's a sign of them questioning things and pushing the boundaries, and instead of telling them, no, you do as I say, talk to them and explain to them. And that's how I was a lot as a kid, and even as an adult. Anytime I would get a new job or something, I would tell them right off the bat, I'm going to ask a ton of questions, because I don't want you to tell me, hey, weld these two pieces of metal together and put a hole right here and send it out the door. I'm going to be like, why? What's it for? And some bosses don't appreciate it, but I've had bosses where I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be smarter if we did it this way, or quicker if we did it this way? And they're like, I never thought of it like that, or looked at it like that. And you might be right. Let's try it. And we'd try it, and it would either fail or it would work. And I'm like, let's start doing it that way. It worked out a lot better. I appreciate it. For a long time, I was pretty closed-minded, and everything I thought was the right way. And it's a lot like my middle child. He's super knows everything already. He's a little know-it-all already, and I see so much of myself in him, and it's hard. It shouldn't be hard. I should be way more understanding than I am, but I just get frustrated and tell him to listen to me, because this is how it needs to be. And it really had me reflecting on the way I parent him. And my cousin, actually, she listens to a lot of my videos, and I'd mentioned the other day about my mom saying I had an anger issue, and that I was like, well, and that I'm going to teach it to my boys. And I'm like, well, where did I learn it from? And of course she said, not me. And my cousin got a chuckle out of that. And we started talking about it a little bit, and I was like, you know, both of her moms are they were naysayers, you know, like anytime you would say, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. I'll use like, you know, when my wife first got pregnant, we were living with them at the time, and instead of being like, oh my God, congratulations, a new baby, the first thing out of her mouth was, well, you guys gonna move out? You're not ready. You can't even take care of yourself. How are you gonna take care of a kid? And that's exactly how I am. My wife tells me all the time, God, you're like your mother. And my cousin says the same thing. She's like, geez, she's like, am I that way? Started thinking about it, and I was like, don't you remember when we were kids, it was a Christmas. I was maybe about 9 or 10 years old. And I was all excited about getting this new RC car. And she just was like, RC cars are lame. You're just going to drive it around in the yard, and then the battery dies, and you got to wait an hour for it to charge. It's pretty lame. And it just crushed me. I was just devastated about that. And we are so much like our mothers, as much as we don't think we are. And I don't know how aware our mothers are, and they're probably going to hear this and say, I'm not like that. Well, my cousin and I see it differently. Another example I can think of, I remember my mom, when I first got my driver's license, my first pickup truck was a little Toyota pickup off-road truck. And I remember her saying, I don't even know how the conversation came up, but I remember her saying, you can't just put a Chevy motor in a Ford. It's not how things work. She's very rigid in her thinking. Like, one can't go in the other. It doesn't work that way. And that's the best thing you can do to a Ford, is put a Chevy engine in it, turns out. When I grew up and became a fabricator and started building race cars and putting Chevy engines and all the Ford Rangers, and I think a lot of that held me back too, now that I think about it, because I always had those rigid views, like, you can't just do that. You can't. And then I got to a point where I started realizing, I'm like, oh, I could do so much more. Like, I could take a Honda Civic engine and put it in an F-350 if I wanted to. There's guys putting street bike engines in little smart cars and getting those things to go 1,000,000 miles an hour. So I kind of felt like eventually I broke through that rigid thinking to where anything's possible. You're never going to get a job if you don't graduate school. How many times have I heard that? You're never going to be able to get a job. You need to go to college, or you're never going to get a good job. It's like, I don't want a college job. I don't want a job that takes college. I want to build things with my hands. All self-taught. Not self-taught. I learned from other people, but I didn't go to school is what I meant. And then it just made me think about all the jobs I could have had that the barrier was school. That's a different topic. Maybe I'll come back to that in a different video. The topic of this video is I need to change the way I'm governing. The way I'm coaching my kids on the baseball team, not my kids. I'm coaching the baseball team that I'm assistant coach of. We got a couple of troubled boys on our team. And one of my boys last night, he almost brought me to tears. He was super hard on himself. He went out to bat twice. He struck out to bat, which is, it's normal. Baseball's a sport of failures. I think it's like 70% failure rate at bat. So it means out of 10 balls, you might hit 3 of them. And he goes up to bat, and I could just tell that he's nervous. I coached this kid. I spent not a lot of time with him, but enough time with him to know their personalities and know when they're feeling good. And he goes up there and he looks really rigid and really nervous. He swings at a ball that's, a foot over his head, and you hear the pop of the glove, and he swings the bat. I'm like, dude, not only was that above your head, you were a full 2 seconds late on it. Like, what's going on? He comes in the dugout and he's pretty upset, and the other coaches, first base coach gets to him before I do and says, hey man, it's not a big deal. And then I'm sitting in the dugout watching the game, and I look over and he's still over there in tears. Now, I'm not talking about like his eyes are watering and he's upset because he struck out. Like, he's like sobbing, crying. So I go over there and I'm like, hey bud, what's going on? Like, why are you so stressed out? Why are you putting so much pressure on yourself? And he's like, my dad's here. And I'm like, I was like, your dad not normally here? He's like, well, you know, I have a younger brother that has, I don't know, like some learning disability or something. So it's hard for my dad to make these games because he's got to do whatever. I don't know if he picks him up from some special school or if mom works. So dad is working or at home, you know, after work, he's got to stay home with the kids while mom goes to work. I don't know the dynamics of the household. But what I do know is he's really trying hard to impress his dad. And it was just hard to see how upset he was because he didn't get, you know, a good hit for his dad. He was swinging at wild pitches and he was in tears. And I think he might have made a bad play on the infield earlier. And he was really beating himself up. And I'm like, hey, man, you know what's going to impress your dad is, you know, you go out there and you try your best and you swing at, you know, you make good, you know, swing at strikes. I don't care. He doesn't care if you strike out. But swinging at wild pitches just because you want to put the bat on the ball to get to, you know, to show your dad that you can hit. Or I don't know what the pressure was. It was just hard to see how much pressure he put on himself because his dad was finally there at a game. And he's not the only kid. There's a couple of kids on our teams whose dad rides them really hard on them, and they put a ton of pressure on themselves and they screw up because of it. They're constantly, when they strike, first thing they do is turn their head and look to the stands to see what dad has to say. And I put a lot of pressure on my boy, but I don't know, maybe too much. You know, I feel like I'm a lot softer than maybe some guys with their kids, but I'm hard on them when I need to be hard. But maybe a lot of those times aren't times I need to be as so cold. I need to be a little more understanding. And I think it's just, you know, me parenting the way that I was parented. Not saying my parents were hard on me, but it was much do as I say and not listening and not being more understanding. And when you take the fun out of it for them, when you're always yelling at them, like, pick up the ball, or I can't believe you missed that, or, you know, get your glove down. You know, on top of it, it is frustrating, you know, when they don't listen. But I just think I need to, you know, I wanted to help young kids that were in this situation, young boys. Actually, before I get onto that, we have another boy on our team who's just, he's really argumentative. He's really angry. And I know he had a troubled family life. I think his parents left when he was relatively young. And he's looking for any attention. And that's another hard thing to watch. It's really hard to see how much damage, you know, a kid takes that they don't have their family in their life. And I think he's being raised by his grandmother. And let's be real, grandparents are usually a lot softer. And I think too, they overcompensate, you know, since mom and dad left. I'm just going to give him the world and kind of spoil him, you know, because you feel bad. They feel bad for them and stuff. And he's looking for structure. He's looking for a strong role model to keep him grounded. And I find myself just shouting at him and arguing with him and a lot of things that I shouldn't do. And I need to change the way I'm going about things and being a better parent and a better coach and practicing more of what I preach. You know, I'm coming on here at YouTube telling everyone, you know, where I think parents could do better. And I'm a hypocrite if I'm not if I'm not doing this, that what I'm asking or expecting other people to do or suggesting other people do. So I'm definitely reflecting on what my cousin said, and you know, what that video my wife sent me about, you know, intelligent kids and questioning things, and just how I go about, you know, coaching and parenting. My cat's over there getting after something. I can't tell if it's a frog or a mouse or something. I want to go check it out after this video. So if that's you, maybe you don't see it in yourself, or maybe you've never really reflected on it, but I'm definitely noticing it in myself, and maybe this video will help you see it and kind of be like, oh damn, I do that. I am just like my mother. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's not all bad. I think, you know, sometimes you need to be hard, and sometimes you need to be cold, and sometimes you need to be the bad guy. But there is other ways of going about it, and teaching instead of yelling. So I need to get better at teaching, and I got yelling down for sure. I need to get better at listening. You know, there's what's that saying? You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen twice as much as you speak. Maybe I need to listen to that. Take that advice. I'm gonna leave this video here. I need to go check out what the cat's got. It might be a little mouse, or it looked like a toad, so I gotta go check it out.